this is gonna be quite the undertaking. Okay. I am excited and scared because I am making stays. I got him to get a pencil. I came back and there's a cat in my shot. Okay, you can stay there, Roxy. Hey y'all, it's Alirien, and today I am beginning the process of building Lady Sybil Rochester. Today I am starting her stays or her corset. Technically, as this is the Elizabethan era, corsets are not a thing. Technically, stays are not even a thing yet. The precursor to both of these from the Renaissance era was referred to as a pair of bodies. And there are plenty of historic costumers and costume historians, not inherently the same thing, who talk about this subject, so I'm not gonna go too much in depth unless people really want me to. I am just gonna focus on the process and decision making that goes into all of this, the materials I'm using, etc. And I'm looking at the size chart now. I need to take a few measurements to know for sure what I need. I'm about to do that now. And then I need to look at the styles of the corset. Most fitted, structured upper body undergarments are colloquially catch-all called corsets. I am going to be referring to these as stays because that is technically historically closer to what I am making. I am also hoping that I can do spiral lacing on this. I'm looking at the designs here. I know I've got a bigger image somewhere. Here we go. So there are 3 versions of the Elizabethan-inspired corset or stays. I'm gonna say stays in this pattern, and they are all inspired by 2 surviving garments from the Elizabethan era. This is the ladies, Elizabethan ladies underpinnings by, what was her name? Margot Anderson. That's actually where pretty much all of my patterns have come from for this costume. Anyway, these are the 2 designs for this pattern. So this first one with all of the tabs is based off of the pair of bodies that Fürstgräfin Dorothea von Neuburg was buried in. And these currently are in the collection at the National Museum in Munich. This second version, with fewer tabs and larger tabs, is inspired by Elizabeth I, and these were installed on her funeral effigy. They are currently on display at the Westminster Abbey in London. I believe that Elizabeth's are going to be much more fitting, both literally and figuratively. So I'm gonna go with this version. So I need to take measurements and then find my muslin and mark pattern pieces. And I am actually, for the sake of having all the pattern sizes in the future, in the event that I need a larger pattern or someone else needs to borrow, I am going to transfer with a pokey wheel, with a marking wheel, tracing wheel, that's the term, onto other paper and go from there. I'm doing mock-ups of basically everything for this. I'm excited, I am terrified, but let's do this. I think I've rambled enough, haven't I? Yes, let's get started on a mock-up for some Elizabethan stays. The measurements put my bust at a size 10 and my waist at a size 14. So those are the points I'm going to initially mark, and then I will line a best fit between them. So yeah, we are gonna do view B. I'm going to trace all of this onto probably butcher paper, especially for this pattern. The pattern pieces are gonna be smaller, so they will fit in the width of my butcher paper. Butcher paper is also basically plain white bulletin board paper, separate size groups. Okay, there's a lot of instructions here. All right, let's open up the pattern. Okay, this is a very large piece of paper. I'm gonna need to extend the entire table in order to do this. I also don't know, so they've got sizing groups for the stays pattern. 2 to 10, 12 to 20, and then 22 to 30. I don't need 22 to 30. That's all on a separate sheet. that's been folded back up. I understand there's only so much you can do when you're making patterns to be as size inclusive as possible. When you don't fit any sort of ideal body type, even things like this that are meant to be easier for customizing your size to fit you nearly perfectly are so much more complicated, because I now need to cut out two versions or trace off two versions of this pattern piece in order to actually find the line of best fit between my bust and my waist. I have double the work just working with the pattern of most other people who are going to be working with this, and it's very irritating. But I'm gonna stop talking and extend the table and lay this out. I'm gonna cut out all the pieces I need. Like, I am cutting this piece apart because this doesn't need to be this big. I'm gonna need the farthingale eventually. I saw the smock on another page, but I'm just gonna cut all these pieces apart and fold them together based on what they are, and we will go from there. Mother of boning channels, Batman? Yeah, this is the trace of where the boning channels go for the two different patterns. They are in two different colors so that I can tell the difference. Sort of. I have also marked with bees at the top and bottom each individual boning channel, and I'm about to split the difference. Some of them are exactly the same, so there's not going to be too much to do there. But yeah, I'm gonna split the difference on some of these, and I'm going to opt for more boning rather than less. I would rather more structure than not enough. I suspect these might have the same, well, let me count and see how many bones they have, because if they have the same number, then it doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of finding the best fit between the angles and positions. And there we have it. I have traced off all 7 pieces for the stays. It's kind of late in the day, and this took a while, so I'm going to take a break for the evening and transition to some video editing and some other work that doesn't need a lot of good light to really do well, and start working on getting this cut and sewn out of muslin tomorrow. At some point, this will probably happen on Friday, because I'll have the car on Friday. I need to go get some industrial zip ties to stand in for boning for the mock-up. I don't want to cut boning for the mock-up and have to recut or throw out any. I want to conserve the boning as much as possible because boning is expensive, but you know, I only need 6 for the back. I'll count up however much I need for the front. I will also say the griping I was doing about combining sizes and the way that this pattern handled different sizes, there's one set of patterns over there. That's our 12 to 20. And there's our 2 to 10. I had to keep them separated to really know what I was doing. Tracing the back piece was not that bad because this back line, including the notches, lined up almost perfectly. And even the grommets and the boning were all exactly the same. It was just the height of certain things, like you can see my marking of where to lengthen or shorten in the different colors, and then I had to change the curve and height positioning. But one issue I had was the back piece goes higher than the front piece as far as where the bust line actually lies. The top of this is higher than the top of this bust. A lot of changes are going to happen because I don't know if I handled the notch placements on new lines properly. Not so much with the back. And not at all with these because these are just standard size. Like all of these go at the waist hem, so the size 14 is fine. It outright said use the size that you need based on your shoulder width for the strap. So this is the size 18. But figuring out how to line up the disparate sizes of the front and the side back, especially the side back, was nigh impossible. I am outright issuing a challenge to pattern makers, pattern designers, sewists, and costume makers out there who go into pattern making at any point. If you are trying to make your pattern accessible to those of varying sizes and a wider size range, please, please, please figure out or find or incorporate a way for people using your pattern to know where to line up different sizes if they're on different pieces for the sake of finding the line of best fit. Because I had no clue how to line up the 10 and the 14 for this piece to actually find the size that works, and I suspect that this piece is gonna be completely off because I eventually went with lining up this line that I think was supposed to. There's also no straight of grain marked on these pieces, and that's part of the problem. This one was easy because center backs are always on the vertical straight grain. Center fronts, always on the vertical straight grain. So these two I could work with. I don't know if I positioned the height of this one properly. I think I did because you can see that these almost line up. So this I did fairly well with. But this, I think, got fucked up. Please, pattern makers, grain lines and matching points for tracing different sizes, please. I'm gonna take a break from this pattern until tomorrow. I will check back in the morning when I'm getting all of that done. At refitting the pattern traced off. Technically I took 2 takes on this. Now that I've got this traced, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the muslin. I also need to see if it recommends any sort of interfacing. As far as I'm aware, 1 front piece cut on the fold, 2 side backs, 2 center backs, 4 straps, and 4 of each of the tab shapes, of which there are 3. So I'm working through my Cabbage Patch and a bag of pre-used muslin and pulling apart, this is an old Kim Possible pant mock-up, I'm pulling apart the pieces to hopefully get the largest swaths that I can. I suspect I'll have to cut this one off of my bolt that I have in the corner, but if I can piece this together with old muslin and reuse a lot of it and not have to cut off more and save the fresh uncut for bigger projects down the line, that'll be great. Though I probably will end up ordering 1 if not 2 more bolts of muslin like that before this project is done. Hopefully it waits till after so that I can get the fresh muslin for Mia and other future costumes, but I may need more. I might go ahead and order more when I order the finished fabric for this project. But anyway, ramblings aside, let's get some muslin set up, and I'll probably have to, well, I say probably, I'm going to need to press a bunch of wrinkles out of all of this because you can see, turn down the brightness here. You can see just how terribly creased this is. It's not great, so I'm gonna press all of this flat as best I can to figure out the best way. I may also go ahead and let myself piece things. So if a pattern piece doesn't fit on one of these muslin pieces that well, I'll find another piece to match up to it, stitch those together, or trace off what's hanging over onto another piece and stitch that together. Because piecing was a normal practice until I think sometime in the 19th or 20th centuries. Basically, looms were only so wide for centuries. And because of that, a lot of pattern pieces and garment styles meant you ended up with needing more fabric and more width than you would normally get from woven fabric, because it usually was only like 30 inches wide at most. Now standard fabric tends to be 45, 48, 60 inches wide, and even wider. Like, I'll show you my muslin. Like, you can see on my bolts of muslin here, this is like 50, 60 inches wide, not folded. So, and most fabric you get in fabric stores like Joann or Hobby Lobby or Walmart, which does sell fabric, very typically they're selling it folded in half, so it seems narrower. But fabric was actually narrower back in the Gap, so they would have to take pattern pieces that hung off the edge of the woven fabric. They would cut what was missing on another section of the fabric and stitch that together and treat it as one piece, hence piecing. And you see it all over the place, even in wealthy people's clothing for centuries. Anyway, more ramblings. I'm so sorry. It's one of those days. But yeah, let me go through my muslin and cut out this mock-up, and we'll get it stitched together as best we can. And I have a 100 pack of 14-inch long industrial cable ties, just plastic cable ties, which on their own are fairly flexible, but once you get several of them, it actually becomes much more difficult to bend all of them at once. And so once I have the like 30 bones that go in the front, 6 in the back, it'll still have the same effect when worn, and still be able to give me a sense of where I need to fix any issues of fit. Let's press and cut some muslin, shall we? Do y'all like my assortment of pattern weights? That's the only actual set of pattern weights. That's a cufflink case. That's the base of my grommet setter. Bottle of quill ink. Used up candle. Bottle of sealing wax chips. A box full of buttons. Nope, empty box. And a whetstone. Alright friends, I got everything cut as best I could, and I can't find my transfer paper to mark the boning channels and everything else, so I have to go deal with that tomorrow because it's late, but I will get this sewn up in the morning. As expected, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of piecing, at least for this bodice front section, for the sake of reusing old muslin. So this section here, this line here, fell right about here on the pattern. So this triangle is what's missing. So I've cut that out of an extra segment of muslin, and I'm gonna mark where this edge needs to fall on here, and I'm just gonna zigzag stitch it in place vertically. And once those are stitched in place, I'll go ahead and do all the rest of the marking and construction and everything. Alright, so boning channels are stitched. I'm about to press them. I'm trying to be a good little seamstress and actually press each and every seam or stitching after stitching to actually set the thread and make the final garment that much better, even in a mock-up, because the mock-up is a test run, so, you know, you gotta do things. So I'm about to press that, and I have a bunch of the zip ties set aside in order to stiffen this and actually make it do the do, which I had them in to see how it felt, and it did stiffen it up pretty well, but I realized I should press, so I took them all out. But I marked all of the actual channels that need the bones with a highlighter on the other side there so that they all go in the right place, because keeping that straight with this many bones is difficult. I do have one issue though, in that these, because of their caps, are not long enough to actually reach the very bottom down here. But that's okay. I'm only missing like half an inch at best. Yeah, I'm gonna put the bones in and then I need to go eat. So once I press this and put the bones in, I'm gonna put it on my form just for the sake of putting it up. And then I'm gonna do the boning channels on the backs, press those, put the bones in, and then, oh, I also need to do stuff with the straps, but that can wait. We have a mock-up that is as complete as it can be without fitting. There's the front. Such a look with the necklaces on there. The cable ties are doing a pretty good job of standing in for boning, with the exception of like, they've got, I realized as I was working with them that they've got this spot about an inch up from the end where it bends a little bit, so it's doing weird things at the bottom where they're not all turned the same way. I'll probably pull out and turn the ones that are the wrong way so that they're all the same. Mom's gonna help me fit that tomorrow and make adjustments. I can already tell that I'm gonna need to curve this further up to go over my hip, and so this is gonna be much longer and much steeper of a curve. I'm also gonna have to probably lengthen that strap, and I'm gonna need to adjust this because these are not meeting the way that they should. Like, we'll fit that tomorrow, and in the meantime I'm gonna take a break and get some editing done. So I'll see y'all when this has been fitted. So we went ahead, that was loud. We went ahead and did the fitting for the stay mock-up here, which was pretty simple. Honestly, the main change that needs to happen is I need to curve the sides higher. That was the main problem, is this thing somehow ended up too long. If I remove that excess fabric, it allows the center back, which was doing this, to actually sit vertically parallel and lace properly. So that is the plan here. I have markings, I'll show you as best I can. This line here is where my natural waist sat. So I'm gonna curve the center front up from its current point, because the front center point there goes perfectly down as far as it needs to. I'm very, very happy with its position. But the side is way too long by almost 6 inches. The side and back pieces here are just gonna get shorn right there because I might dip the back down a little bit, but it's not going to go all the way down to where it currently is. That is the plan. I also need to, because of how they were falling, I'm going to take these straps on the front and the back of these stays and shift them closer to the center line of their respective pattern pieces by about ½ an inch, because the front straps were sitting here and the back straps were way too close to my arm as well. I also need to lengthen the strap by about 3 inches. So that is the plan. So I'm going to grab the pattern pieces that I traced off of the original pattern, and I'm going to make those adjustments there. Like I'm gonna trace these marking lines onto that and then make my adjustments. So I'm gonna get real cozy with my French curve for this particular spot, trace off a new pattern or cut the new pattern, and from there I can cut out the fabric for the final mock-up. And I have had the thought, based on reading the instructions, it is intended to be constructed completely flat as I've done with this one, and then edge bound all the way around. And they actually suggest using a leather binding because 1, that's not going to ravel, and 2, it would be period plausible for them to use a leather as a binding instead of more fabric. So I may go get a leather binding or a pleather binding, a vinyl of some kind, to be the edge binding for the final stays. But I can do most of the construction without that. I also need to check ahead of time what to do as far as the eyelets, because metal grommets weren't a thing yet, so technically I should hand stitch them. I may go ahead and use metal eyelets since this is an undergarment. And let's make these pattern adjustments and we will go from there. Now that I've got this mock-up done, the pattern seems to suggest that this side piece should actually be part of the front piece, and that the only seam between front and back should be this one here. When I trace this off, I'm actually going to trace these off as one piece, which will eliminate how many seams I have to worry about and hopefully reduce the amount of fabric being used. And already I've pretty significantly reduced how much fabric I need to use, because look how much I was able to cut off. Let's trace this off onto some fresh manila paper. Y'all aren't gonna let me have any peace, are you? Nope. Alright, so now that we have our edited pattern, I picked some fabric. No, I'm not ashamed, because it's gonna go under everything. People aren't gonna see this. Why not have some fun with it? So I'm using this, and I'm using some blue thread as a contrast, because there's no blue in this design whatsoever, so all my stitching will stand out. Let's get this cut and sewn up as much as possible. Oh, I need to trace the grommet placing onto there before I do anything else. That is a thing I need to do. And then once I get most of the way through this, I think this will end up taking 2 days, merely because once I cut all of the boning, I will need to actually coat the ends of it in my liquid clear Flex Seal here so that none of that will poke through the fabric. I'm not doing boning casings with twill tape or anything like that, so yeah, we're gonna take care of the ends of the boning. And then I do need still to pick trim for the edges, which I want to do leather, but I may have to use a bias binding for simplicity's sake and for time reasons. And I need to find my grommets. I might order some really good, like, heavy duty bootlaces or tent cord or something so that the lacing has no chance of fraying apart. But in a pinch, grosgrain ribbon will do the trick. So yeah, let's start cutting this out and let's make our final pair of bodies for Sybil. Yay! I have everything cut. I almost forgot to cut the tabs, but I got those done. I've got straps, I've got backs, I have fronts, I have boning channels marked on the fronts, which may be difficult for the camera to pick out right now, but there are blue lines running vertically along them. So I've got everything set. I need to wind 2 bobbins, which I did find the other machine. My bobbin winder on my machine is currently broken, which means that the spindle that the bobbin goes on isn't spinning when I engage it. So I couldn't find my grandmother's machine when I was making the mock-up, so I was using a power drill to wind my bobbins. But I have found my grandmother's machine, so that is going to wind a couple of bobbins for me. Let's get a couple of bobbins made, and we will get this stitched up. I think I've been debating back and forth in my head of whether or not to use interfacing for this to stiffen it further, and I think for the sake of comfort, I think I will hold off on the interfacing. I'm just going to do the fabric and the boning. I should have plenty of grommets. Is that what this box is? No, that's calabash pins. The only thing is, once I get the boning channels stitched and measured, I will have to cut and cap all of the spiral steel bones. And I don't have metal individual caps, I have Flex Seal, which needs at least 24 hours to cure. But in the meantime, once the boning is curing, I will go ahead and get started on the mock-up for the farthingale, which will be its own separate video. Let's stitch this together as much as we can. Let's make bobbins first.
Category by submitting a design for a sports facility, because of course they did. The gym Mario he knows enough about
that great in here because the overhead's off and I don't feel like turning it on. But we are most of the way through this thing. Cable ties are in place to help it have its shape for the night. And I'm about to go sit down on the coffee table to cut up the actual spiral steel bones, which will be put in place day after tomorrow at this rate because they need 24 hours to cure, and I'm not about to start putting them in place at 11 p.m. tomorrow. So they will cure tomorrow while I start the mock-up for the farthingale, and then this will get finished up on Tuesday. The straps currently don't look like they reach their finished point, at least with them being pinned flat on the form, but I'm pretty sure that if I raised this a little bit or if I shifted the strap, it will reach. I may also just have to reduce the seam allowance width to make the ends meet. Quite literally, but I'm very, very happy with how it's fitting on this form. I'm quite pleased with how far I've gotten today. So I'm gonna go sit down with a ruler and the tin snips and everything and cut and cap the bones. And then I will speak to y'all in a couple of days to finish this, but tomorrow for the farthingale mock-up. Yay. Oh, Roxy, that was cute.
Jeannie walked up to our nose to nose and she was, oh.
Best friends.
Hello. Hello.
Are you going to help me?
You can hang out with me.
I just need you to not try to eat any of what I'm doing. No, you don't get to demand that I pet you. Shush for a minute, Dan. My boning has been cut and has been dipped in Flex Seal, though I think less of it stuck than was supposed to. I think I'm gonna need to just go ahead and order actual caps for future corsets and stays and pairs of bodies, but this is what I'm gonna have to move forward with for now. You will have to forgive me. I've not been feeling very great today. Yesterday, I got basically nothing done because we were out of the house all day with friends. So the farthingale didn't get started. These have had plenty of time. I forgot to grab the list of what measurement to go where because I'm gonna have to remeasure them to make sure I'm putting them all in the right spot just to be absolutely safe. But once the boning is in place, which I did cut them 1/2 inch shorter than the boning channel itself measures, because you gotta leave room for stitching and closing up the top. Boning and channels, don't stitch upper edge yet as you'll be taking the boning back out again. I've done that part already. Okay, so once I'm gonna put the boning in just to make sure it's all the right size and see how it feels with the actual boning. And then it says to baste the side seams, which I eliminated my side seams after the mock-up. Baste the shoulder seams. I will baste the shoulder seams. I'm definitely gonna baste the shoulder seams because I need to figure out exactly how much seam allowance I need on those straps. So I'll probably do the shoulder seams first and then put all the boning in and then try it on and see how the shoulder straps feel when somebody is just holding the back together. And if it feels fine, then okay. Then shoulder straps into place. Should be snug, but not tight enough to cut in. That's probably what's gonna end up happening. They want me to flat fill a seam. I still could have done a lot more to this without the boning having been cut. But, oh well. This pattern instruction book goes back and forth a lot. So it's harder to follow on the final garment when you don't need to do all of the fitting stuff that you already did with the mock-up. Whatever. So, I'm gonna make sure that the boning is actually the right length, or I may not. I may just go ahead and stitch up the straps and test how those feel. And then, I need to sew the tabs and sew them on. And I need to bind things and then put in the boning and then stitch the underarm stay line and then put in the grommets or eyelets and then measure and cut the lacing I appreciate that she's got the recommendation of how to wear the corset if you've never worn one before, which it's still not a corset, but they keep using corset and it's confusing me. Yeah, we're gonna do shoulder straps. I'm gonna test the boning, but I'm not gonna stitch up the top until I'm absolutely sure I'm ready to stitch the top. But we do the shoulder straps. It recommends flat felling the seams for the shoulder straps. I can definitely finish this today if I can keep up with working on it. I'm sorry, my whole demeanor is off today. I'm normally much more gung-ho about this stuff, but if nothing else, I should be honest with y'all, because I think people can tell when people aren't acting normal in a video and aren't being honest with them. Y'all want somebody genuine, right? But basically, last night, my self-esteem tanked really hard, like super crashed hard. And I have been struggling to build it back up. I keep telling myself the stuff in my head that I should be telling myself to avoid the problematic thoughts, and I'm threatening to tear up just talking about it right now. But I will be okay. I'm just going to work through the feelings, because if I am productive and have something to show for today, that will help. Oh, stop it. I've always hated that I'm an easy and a messy crier. It's always made me feel kind of pathetic, you know? I'm sorry. Y'all don't want this. Y'all want a sewing video. I'll be okay. I've had a piece of chocolate to cheer myself up, and I might have another one when this is done. Because what I really want to do to make myself feel better is not affordable in terms of money or time right now. God damn it. Just keep coming. Okay. Let's get work done. If you're still here, you are a fantastic viewer. I appreciate you. I appreciate your patience and your understanding and your willingness to see the real raw me every now and then. So let me give you your reward. I just did a test fit with these straps and they're actually falling beautifully in place. They're nice and flat, better than they were falling on the form, which I figured would be the case, but I wanted to baste them just to be safe. So now that they are in place, this thing has, if any of you make a pair of bodies or a set of stays or a corset at any point in your future, be prepared. It will seem like nothing when it's just fabric, but when all of that steel is in there, if you use steel, it becomes a hefty weight difference. Like, I kind of want to find the mock-up and weigh the mock-up of just the fabric and then weigh this and see just what the difference is in weight. I'm gonna take out my basting stitches probably just for cleanliness and then re-stitch the shoulders with the normal stitch length at a 5/8 seam allowance, and then I am going to turn the seam allowances toward whatever edge is wider and stitch that down from the outside, basically to top stitch it down, and then I'll snip off any excess before I do binding. And then once the straps are securely stitched in place, I need to press those seams and then I'm going to sew up the tabs. Can I have more room to stand, please? Thank you. Okay, straps are on, and she looks so much better and came together so much better than I thought she would. I didn't have to do any adjustment to those straps, and I feel so good about it. Look at her! Oh, I need to name her. I need to name her. Marie is doing fabulously modeling something that is at least one size too large for her. And the back obviously is overlapping here, but there's a shoulder seam. And there's a shoulder seam. I'm gonna take a break to eat a lunch because it's been a while since breakfast. And then I will come back and do tabs and start binding and do grommets. We'll leave this top edge unbound, or I will baste on the binding so that I can open it back up to put a busk in place. But for now, I think I may just leave the zip ties in there so that it's not too soft right there. I'll be back to sew up the tabs. It is, I don't even know what time because my phone just died, but I am most of the way through bias binding this. As you can see, I just have the back left neckline, and I have the inside of the arm size and I have the tabs left to bind. The one thing I hate about bias binding anything is making corners look nice on the outside. Both of the front corners look horrendous, but you know what? This is an undergarment, so it's not a big deal. I'm very happy with this though. It has the beautiful, like, elongated front, and it really does help just already on its own with like the barrel chesting effect this is supposed to have. I have a bit of stitching on this side, on the front, that I need to undo because I realized that for the top, because the boning was half an inch shorter than the full length, that this should be a 1/2 inch seam allowance, not a 5/8 seam allowance, but I'm doing the rest with the 5/8. Hopefully the seam line from making the para bodies, like putting the initial layers together, will be hidden by the binding. Again, this is an undergarment though, so most people aren't going to be seeing this thing at all, let alone seeing all of those details and like looking that close at it. I am going to pick out the bit of stitching that needs to be picked out, and then I'm going to measure while it's here what I need for the bust and order it, and hopefully that won't take terribly long. The plan right now is I am leaving this front center, you can see my fingers slipping underneath it, completely unstitched, so that hopefully I can weasel the busk in and out if need be for transport, for storage, what have you. We almost have a finished pair of bodies, so tomorrow I will do the last bit of binding. I will attach the tabs and I will put grommets on it, and this will be a finished garment. And once this is finished, now that, you know, I lost yesterday, I will start on the farthingale and the bum roll, and hopefully knock those out much faster than I knocked this one out. The bum roll I think I can make as is, because that is something that ties on. I'm sure there's a single size for that, or like very few sizes to work through with that one. The farthingale, I might also just bust out however it's supposed to go based on my waist measurement and go from there. It's really just bodices and sleeves that are going to be an issue, because those need to be fine-tuned to my mishmash of measurements. Mishmash of measurements. Let's say that 5 times fast. She looks fabulous, and I need to think of a name for her because I feel like I have birthed a child. What is that one viral line that's been all over Instagram Reels and TikTok? Peasants, behold what I have birthed into being. Yeah, I think that's it. So yeah, I will see y'all in the morning for the final steps. I finished the binding. It's done, at least for the main stays. I also have grommets in, and I am tentatively using this leather cord to lace them. I am not happy with myself about the grommets. I made a mistake. I should have interfaced at least this section of the stays, and I didn't. So this was too thin for the grommets, and so I needed spacers, and I didn't think about the spacers until literally the last 2 grommets. And they look like a mess because I was really struggling to get them on. I was really struggling with the process. So they're not the most cleanly placed, and one of them has the raw edge of the fabric peeking out of it because it is so off-center. But we're gonna have to roll with it because I don't know how to take grommets out to reset them. I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that because I would like to just replace the grommets on this rather than having to make the whole thing again. But I'm glad I was already planning on making a whole nother run of this thing, because now I'm clearly gonna have to if I want a nicer one done. I will show you what I have moved on to. Now that it is wearable, I am just finishing up the tabs. So I am putting, hush for a moment, Carrie. I am putting the bias binding on the tabs. I've got, those fireworks. I thought I heard fireworks for a second. It is the 6th. I must be mistaken. Or it stopped. Anyway, I've got this one mostly done, or about halfway done technically. I'm stitching, I actually just finished stitching that one. I've got 4 more tabs to do the edge of, and then I'm gonna press them all over at the same time, stitch them all to the back at the same time, and then line them up and stitch the top bias binding on in one go, because the way they have it here, you bind them all together at the top with the top sections butting up to each other, which it's not going to do cleanly because I'm trying to do it one-handed, and then these corners will overlap naturally, and then you just run the binding all the way across the top like so. Because this is the unbound tabs, I will be butting the top binding of this to the hem edge binding of the stays and zigzag stitching them together, which will be nice and easy because it's seam allowance to seam allowance. I don't have to dodge boning or anything. It can go nice and quick. That is what I'm working on now. This is literally the last thing, is to put the bias binding on the tabs, connect the tabs together, put the tabs on the stays. Let's do it.